In our previous videos, we were going through different survey methods, from our executive interviews where we are talking face to face to professionals, our mall intercept interview where we have a kiosk at the mall and we're talking to people as they walk by, from our self-administered surveys where we hand out, say, a piece of paper for people to fill out. Or we can look at our online surveys or sending it through the mail. How do you decide which survey method to use? Well, it's going to come down to some key considerations. So when we talk about sampling precision, we're looking at accuracy versus cost. The lowest cost is an online survey. The challenge with online surveys is you really don't know who is truly filling them out. So if your focus really is more on accuracy to make sure you have the key group and that individual is the one providing you with that feedback, then you might want to go with more of a computer-assisted telephone interview. Again, if you are doing more low budget, if you're looking at the cost per participant, the cost per participant is lowest with the online survey. If you want people to do a taste test, to handle a product, they need to feel something, taste something, then you want to do either the door-to-door or a mall intercept. So something where you are in face-to-face contact with them and have a little bit of time to have them inspect whatever that product or prototype or whatever they're considering. Now, as we look at the quality of data, we of course want to consider validity and reliability. So go back to our slides on reliability and validity. So if you recall, reliability is how consistent is the data, and validity looks at, does it measure what we intended it to measure? So things to consider as you are looking at the survey method that you're using. Does it provide that reliability and validity? We would look at the length of our questionnaire. And when it comes to how long, how many questions we have, the length. I mean, in the ideal world, your survey is only 6 to 10 minutes. If you are doing an online survey, it's got to be on the lower end. If it's going to be something that's going to take longer, then door-to-door allows for more time for that survey, but really keep it as short as possible to increase your response rate. Now, what if you want to survey a group where there's not a lot of people who have the expertise that you need in order to have that knowledge? So the challenge, of course, is that you have to find that target group. And so you're either going to have to send out a lot of surveys, and a small percentage of them will actually be relevant. The people who respond will be relevant to what you're looking for, or you need to have it very targeted to that group. So with executive interviews, for example, you go and find that particular person at that particular company who's relevant to what you're researching. If it is something that is rare, so you want to survey people who have some kind of rare health condition, very few people have it, and you don't have a list of people in, say, a support group who would all be relevant, then you're sending out thousands of surveys hoping to find that person with that condition to give you the feedback, in which case you're going to need something that has a very low cost per participant if you're going to have to send it out to thousands and thousands of people. In the perfect world, you would have a list or have an in a particular group that was the group that had the information you needed. So you were partnering with an organization, a healthcare clinic, or another support system to get access to that group that has that information. So if you have a very low response rate, it's going to be more costly. So you're looking for, how do I get a higher response rate? How do I get more people to respond to the survey I sent out without having to send out tons more people? How much structure do you have to your survey? Is it mostly open-ended questions or is it closed questions? If you have more open-ended questions, then doing it in an interview form is better. One of the risks we talked about with self-administered, so like online or paper surveys where we have open-ended questions, is that unless we clearly understand what they're talking about in the section where they write up their response, they get discarded. So in order to make sure that what people are saying is clear and understood by the researcher, then an interview allows for some additional probing, for additional clarification to make sure we are understanding what's happening. So if you have an open-ended question, interviews create data that is more useful than, say, the self-administered or online survey does. If your focus instead is on a very short turnaround, we need to get this done and analyzed quickly. And so we can use the closed questions, so multiple choice, dichotomous questions. Then online will give us the quickest turnaround because, as we said before, online surveys will do some of the preliminary analysis for you, right? It'll look at and create a pie chart for how many people answered one question one way versus another. So it'll do some of that preliminary analysis so you can see right away what the results are. So to compare the different methods, the strength of the MALL-Intercept is that ability to show, explain, probe. The downside is that if you're trying to catch people in a mall, it's not a probability sample. You happen to be getting information from that one group who happens to go to the mall. So it doesn't necessarily represent the greater population. It's a non-probability sample, and your respondents may be rushed. They may be distracted, kids pulling on their sleeves to send them off to do something more exciting. And you can have that interviewer bias. A central location telephone interview, so we're calling people up. The benefit of that is that, again, we can probe, we can clarify, especially if we have open-ended questions, and we'll get much higher quality sample in terms of the responses. But again, the challenge is that there is that interview bias. They can be distracted. And if we are relying on people to pick up the phone, the response rate can be pretty low. Self-administered questionnaires remove the interviewer bias. You're not being persuaded by how you perceive the person asking questions, and it allows for more convenient time for the respondent to fill out the survey at a time that is convenient to them. The downside is that there is no probing or clarification. So if you have a lot of open-ended questions, they don't tend to always be super useful because we tend to keep the more eloquent writer, speaker feedback and ignore the ones that don't make a whole lot of sense, don't have enough detail, are hard to read or translate. The other challenge we have with self-administered questionnaires is the difficulty controlling who's actually completing the questionnaire. If it's not something being done in front of people, then you don't know who's truly filling it out. We'll have the same problem with a mail survey. You won't know who's completing it in the household. It also has that same downside of no probing or clarification and that risk of low response rate. The benefit, just like the self-administered questionnaire, is that it provides a convenient time and removes the interview bias. We do have a preference for online surveys. While telephone surveys are probably the second most popular, online surveys have become the most because they have the lowest cost per participant, so they're generally inexpensive. They have a higher response rate. People can fill them out at a time convenient to them. They're quick, and we can use them to target a bit more the participants. So we can send a survey or provide a QR code to just the people we really want to hear from. There are some privacy concerns, right, with the information being stored online. And then some concerns about it not being a representative sample. So who are the ones who are choosing to participate, and the risk of, if we're trying to maintain anonymity, can we also prevent the same people from responding multiple times? So as you're considering which type of survey is appropriate for you, you want to take these things into consideration.